WAMT. Well, tonight's show is mostly about two buildings and two people. The buildings are the Freedom Tower, being designed for Ground Zero, and the Audemars Ballroom in Harlem. The people are architect Daniel Libeskind and Malcolm X. Later in the hour, we'll give you a look at the newly preserved ballroom in Harlem, where Malcolm X was killed 40 years ago, and where a memorial will open next week. And we'll take your calls on the importance of Malcolm X to you. But first, the 9/11 Memorial and the controversial office building being designed for the World Trade Center site. As you probably heard, the first building that's supposed to go up at the site was named by Governor Pataki the Freedom Tower. It will be the tallest structure in the world at a symbolic and patriotic 1,776 feet. But as you've probably also heard, the Freedom Tower has been sent back to the drawing board now that Police Commissioner Ray Kelly has declared it too vulnerable to a terrorist attack. That will mean more teamwork for the architectural odd couple of Daniel Libeskind and David Childs, who seem to agree on very little about what should be built. Childs works for developer Larry Silverstein, who holds the lease to the property. Libeskind is backed by the governor after he won the public competition in which he so inspired people with his tower and his memorial to the victims built right into the ground where they died. Libeskind also has this recent book called Breaking Ground, Adventures in Life and Architecture. See, that's little Daniel, maybe entering a sandcastle design competition, who knows. So we'll talk life and architecture, we'll talk security, we'll talk freedom, we'll talk New York now with architect Daniel Libeskind. And our phones are open at the number on your screen. We also invite your email to brian@cuny.tv. Daniel Libeskind, welcome to Brian.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
My first question is really a political one. You and David Childs went through this excruciating process of compromise to design this tower, and now months later it's rejected for security reasons. How is it that Police Commissioner Kelly did not have a seat at the table in the first place telling you what the security requirements were?
Well, as you know, I worked on the conceptual and schematic design, the idea of the tower, its height, its massing, its appearance, its symbolism. 1776 is not just a cute date, it's indeed the date that democracy was brought to the modern world by the Declaration of Independence. But of course security is important, and we're not starting from scratch. We have been working on this master plan for a long time, and of course you will perhaps recall that in the competition I presented a tower with a much smaller footprint, and that indeed is likely will be now the new design.
All right, so we'll get back to that. You're saying your original design is actually going to be closer to being built as a result of all this, but I want to know what happened. Was anybody from the NYPD represented in your co-design process with
We worked
Childs?
very stringently with security experts from all over. Clearly,
Is NYPD included?
yes, I think I don't know technically that but there were huge teams of security experts, and it is indeed true that as something becomes gets closer to realization, other people get very much involved, and you know, security is a very important thing. No one is going to want to design a tower that is the most not the most secure and resilient tower we can build.
Because Ray Kelly, the police commissioner, says, or his people say, that they expressed security concerns about the Freedom Tower design in November 2003, then in writing last summer, and when that letter was ignored, in writing again last fall, not to you, but to the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation, to other powers that be. Did you ever hear about those concerns or those letters?
No, because the project, you know that there was a forced marriage that I call in my book, Breaking Ground, with SO and David Childs. And the governor insisted that the tower not be just business as usual. But of course, after my involvement in the tower was turned over to SOM, who are the executive architects. And they had those meetings. So, of course, we have to design a safe tower.
And are you upset about the way this all came down after all that work, all that excruciating compromise?
No.
And now they come back and tell you, no, we can't do it this way.
No, look, life is full of unpredictable. But the point is that we are building a tower not for the next 5 years, for the next 100 years. It has to be the best, most inspired tower, which is safe, resilient, and I think that's meaningful, and we are all sharing this goal.
So, as I understand it, this redesign means narrowing the base of the tower, and eliminating what has to the public been the two most distinctive features, the twisting torque of the top of the building and the spire that I believe you care about a lot. Are they both gone?
Let me first say, the twisting corkscrew shape was not my idea. That was David Child's idea. I presented a very classical New York tower, which is kind of a straight extrusion into the air. David Childs brought to the table something that he had for many years, this corkscrew tower. That's not the importance of the tower. The importance of the tower is its location at the northwest corner of the site, the apogee of the circle of building encircling the memorial, its height, which is important not just symbolically, but restoring the skyline of New York in a meaningful way.
And it'll still be 1776
And it will
feet?
absolutely be 1776, and it will be related to all the things in the site plan that the people have seen.
Let's look at some LMDC video, Lower Manhattan Development Corporation video, of the plan the way it was. And I'm going to ask you, Daniel Libeskind, to walk us through this, and then we'll talk about how it's going to be different from what we see here. So let's roll this video, and you tell us what we're looking at.
Well, we're looking at ground zero, all the 10 million square feet of density with the Freedom Tower at the high point towards the Hudson River. And we're looking at it from sort of all around, that the whole massing of buildings is really the torch in Lady Liberty's hand around the memorial site at the very center, which is almost 5 acres in size. And that's really the composition of the whole neighborhood. It's not just about a single tower, it's about massing all the buildings to create light, air, and a beautiful place for the memorial.
And so now it's the view from all the way uptown, and now we're back looking from the Hudson River.
From the Hudson, exactly.
That spire on top, is that going to be gone?
No. Absolutely not. There's going to be a spire. You know, the windmills and all the things that you see there, again, were David Child's idea. In my original, I didn't have the windmills. I didn't have any of that cable structure on top. So indeed, in a certain way, the tower is reverting to a more classical New York tower, which I had in mind when I designed this project.
Interesting. Now, in this slide, we see the Statue of Liberty there on the lower left. And I know it was very important to you to have visually the spire and the tower interact with the raised arm of the Statue of Liberty.
Absolutely.
Talk about that concept.
Well, it's very important that the spire, its symbolic height, declaring the Declaration of Independence, is in the skies of New York, that liberty is victorious here. And the fact that the spire is related to the Statue of Liberty are part of the master plan, part of what we struggled. And I think David Childs and us know very well. We've been through this. It's not anything new. We've been through it. They understand it. And I think this is exactly the shape of things to come, because we're going to be working together on this idea.
So the building's no longer going to twist. It's going to be straight up and down?
It's likely that I can't, but it's likely that the footprint will be diminished, because you realize that in this corkscrew tower, the footprint is very large at the bottom and very small at the top.
In order to hold it up.
Well,
so
it's not really in order to hold it up. It's a formal shape. There's no need to make such a huge footprint on the ground. And in order to have better distances, better security, the tower is inevitably going to be more like the one that was...
and just give me a reality check on something, because I thought I read in the papers over the last week that the spire is also gone. Did I just get that wrong?
Yes, the spire is going to be there. I can assure everybody. Governor Pataki was very clear, and so was Mayor Bloomberg, that the spire, the 7076, is not just another accoutrement that is going to be gone. This is what the site is about.
Okay.
It's about liberty. It's about ground zero. It's not just business as usual.
Let's take a look at another slide. This is going to be kind of the master plan, yes. And you're the master planner, which means that you designed what? What are we looking
everything.
at here?
Look, first of all, at the center is the memorial. That's the most important. I thought of the victims, those heroes of 9/11.
Is that the green?
The green, the park. Then the footprints are going deep down, 35 feet under. And of course, I had the water elements also. The waterfalls are within those footprints. And of course, at the slurry wall on the western edge, you can go all the way down to bedrock and experience the power of this site and what it means. Then at the center, we have new streets, Greenwich and Fulton. And the Wedge of Light Plaza, where the PATH station is being developed. And of course, at the center are also new cultural buildings, the museum, performing arts center, buildings that extend the spirit of the site, the meaning of the site. And at the apogee of the circling building is the Freedom Tower, which is open to the Hudson River, 76 feet high, and something that speaks to the skies of New York in a powerful way.
Okay, and we have one more view. We're going to put up one more slide. Again, this is the master plan of the Lower Manhattan redevelopment, the way that we think it's actually going to look. I think a lot of our viewers haven't seen this in a while, So again, what are we?
Well, we're looking at West Street. You see the World Financial Center towards the west. You see the encircling perspective of those buildings rising to the Freedom Tower. At its foot are the footprints and the memorial site with the park. At the center, those smaller volumes are the cultural buildings, Performing Arts Center, the Freedom Museum, and so on. And on the right, you cannot see quite, but there will be, of course, the PATH station and the Wedge of Light, which is a very important element, a kind of gateway in the light of New York into Ground Zero and into the memorial.
I want to remind our viewers why you were in this forced marriage with David Child. You won the public competition with your 1,776-foot tower and your underground memorial. Who imposed Childs on you?
Well, look, we live in a democracy. There are developers. The developers have their own architects. You know, it's a mix. And the fact is that I never wished for this site to be some artificial site. It's in the midst of a democracy. I often thought about it. Democracy is not going to lead to mediocrity. A lot of people think, oh, now you have to work with this person and this person. But look, I've got a responsibility. We've got the families of the victims. We've got the community board one, the local neighbors. We've got the Governor Pataki, who's leading the project, and the Port Authority of New York. We've got the LMDC that was set to rebuild the site. We've got the PATH trains. We've got the subways. We've got the developers and their own architects. And by the way, from the very beginning, I thought this site should sing with the plurality of the voices of New York. It's not a mega structure done by one person, all buildings done in the same way as many of the site plans were in the competition. It's a site that harmonizes and gives shape in space and in meaning to the memorial, to the towers, to the entire public space of the place. And I think that's what we are on track, and we're going to accomplish it.
Anybody in Lower Manhattan, anybody else want to talk to architect and master planner Daniel Libeskind? Now's your opportunity. You've seen him on TV, you've read about him in the newspaper. I don't think he's taking phone calls a lot of places. On my radio show you did, and now here on television, 212-251-0801, 212-251-0801. As an artist, you care deeply about how things look, and you wrote in your book that based on his Florida condos and his 7 World Trade Center, Larry Silverstein is a man who doesn't care much about how things look. What does he care about?
Well, what do developers care for? They care for profit, and I am all for profit. You gotta, if you're a developer, you gotta make money. The site has to be absolutely practical, and that's why, by the way, I proposed a tower, unlike the corkscrew with a big base, a tower that has the same floor plates on every level, so that they are the same. You can rent them, you can lease them. And of course, that's important. But the site has to resonate with more than just that. It has to resonate with memory of 9/11, with the heroes who perished, and it has to reassert that New York was attacked because it is seen globally as the capital of freedom and capital of democracy. So we're not just rebuilding some buildings. We're shaping Lower Manhattan. We're giving it a memorable dimension, and we're reasserting the skyline of the city.
And Silverstein is a businessman, and you're right. When it comes to buildings, Silverstein likes them big, tall, and ready for business. Is that an insult?
No, I think that's not an insult. I think every developer wants them like that, and I think that's absolutely right.
Is that an impediment to instilling the meaning that you think Ground Zero redevelopment should have?
No, absolutely not. The economy of the building is never an impediment. I'm all for making the most profitable buildings with the most leasable floor plans, the most viable technology, and so on. But what I care about is that these buildings not be taken from some formula, but they'd be designed for this site. This site is specific. This site is forever going to be meaningful. So what we have to do on this site is not just shape new architecture, but do something that is inspiring for the public.
So what, for you, Daniel Libeskind, is the bottom line? What are the values that you're trying to preserve through your design that you think the public needs post 9/11 at that site?
Well, first of all, let me assure the public that we're on course and on track. We're not doing anything new. The master plan is a given. We're implementing it. And what was the master plan? It was that central memorial with the deep footprints, with a slurry wall reasserting the resilience and power of that site and of New York, with circling buildings that echo the torch of the Statue of Liberty around the site, the Freedom Tower anchoring it at the Hudson River with 76-foot height, a meaningful height, and it will never be surpassed by taller buildings anywhere in the world because of what it means. And of course, creating the public spaces, the Wedge of Light Plaza, the public buildings, the cultural buildings, a new neighborhood. By the way, you will recall that I also proposed, and it's happening, that some of the density be taken off south of Liberty Street so that we can have more light and more space, beautiful perspectives for people who come to the site, something inspiring and beautiful and memorable.
Let's take a phone call. Mike in Washington Heights. You're on Brian Lehrer Live. Hello.
Daniel, it's Mike. I was wondering, I saw very early footprint drawing, I think, in the New York Times, and the big tower had the footprint of this Star of David. I want to know if that was, if I'm remembering right, and if so, what happened to it.
No, the Star of David is not part of this project. The Jewish Museum in Berlin, of which I'm the architect, it is based, but it's a very different project in a very different place.
Right. So who's confusing the two
Yes.
things? If David Childs reports to Larry Silverstein, who do you report to?
You know, I work with the LNDC, Long Manhattan Development Corporation. I work with the Port Authority. I work with the governor, the mayor. You know, this is not about this architect, that architect. You know, I am entrusted with the responsibility for shaping the entire site. And it's like a piece of music. You have different instruments, but at the end they have to play in harmony. Everything has to really be aligned in every sense, and also culturally, with the idea of the master plan.
Why does Governor Pataki support you so strongly? He strikes me as an uninspired and uninspiring guy when it comes to art. He once criticized Hillary Clinton just because she knew who E.B. White was. And he seemed proud that he didn't know who E.B. White was. Why is he a Libeskind man and not a Silverstein man?
I like the governor. He's a very nice human being, somebody who cares about New York, somebody who understands this site. You know, I identify with him. He comes from a working class background. His parents were immigrants. You know, he shares many of the values that I share, and I think he cares about the site.
So can you work with Childs again after you've trashed him in your book? You trash his taste in architecture. You accuse him of lying to you and patronizing you and stabbing you in the back. You compare your relationship with him to North Korea and South Korea. You don't say which is the North, and call
Not
it
me.
and you call it an he's in the axis of evil, call it an alternative universe. Can you get back to work together after all that?
Can I tell you something? Look, the world is full of different kinds of people and different kinds of struggles. And it's only natural that in a city like New York that you're going to work with all sorts of people. I've never renounced the fact that I always collaborate with people. I'm a collaborative kind of architect because I believe that that's the only way to accomplish a common goal. And I think, for better or for worse, everybody in this site understands that now we have a master plan, we have a vision, we have the governor's leadership here, the mayor's understanding, the people of New York, the public. We want to rebuild this site in a meaningful way. So after what we've been through, I think there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
And in the Freedom Tower design, your book says he ultimately got 51% control, and you got 49%.
Well, that was
Does that
kind
mean
of,
he has the first 30 floors and you have the next 29?
No.
What does
that
that
was
mean?
that was a kind of an understanding that he's the architect of the developer, and he continues to be so, and I have no problem with it. I think what is important is that it is a consultative process, that is a process that means something. It's not just two people sitting in a back room doing something. The governor understands the importance of the site. He's made it very clear that the master plan has to be implemented, that 7076 is not something arbitrary, that the Statue of Liberty, the meaning of the building, in its composition, in its field, at the memorial site, is what he cares for, and that indeed is our program.
Of course, in elections, 51-49 means the 51% side always wins, like in the Senate. So every time there's a vote, he gets to win.
Let me just say, despite the fact that there's been so much reported, and a lot of it is erroneous, a lot of it is just short-lived, we've got a big mission here. We're rebuilding Ground Zero in homage to the heroes of 9/11, in reassertion of the liberties of New York. After all, this is the city that was attacked because of what it stands for, freedom and liberty for all. And I think we are on track rebuilding this site. This is not a piece of paper destined to wind up in a museum. This is a working plan that has brought consensus to a very wide range of stakeholders. Think about it, from the families of the victims to Port Authority, to the LMDC, to the governor, to the mayor, to the PATH trains, Verizon, all things, and yet we're on track. Of course, we have a delay now with the security questions, but it's a delay well worth considering because we are building something that has to be great.
I'm curious about something else that you and Childs disagreed with about your book, Rockefeller Center. You like it as architecture and design. He doesn't. Why the difference?
Well, in the book I recount the story. I said to David Childs that I love the Rockefeller Center, and this is a composition of many different buildings that creates a great public space. He said he hated it. So, look, everybody has a right to their opinion. I still believe that the Rockefeller Center is a beautiful place.
Tell me why. I'll tell you what. I used to work in Rockefeller Center, and I actually think it's great for tourists, but it's the kind of glass and steel tower that makes a lot of 6th Avenue ugly. Why don't you think so?
No, I have to say, I love the Rockefeller. I love even the architecture, that soaring, beautiful vertical architecture. Look, skyscrapers are not just a matter of aesthetics. They're a matter of economics. You have to build practical buildings. We live in a new era of 21st century. We have modern technology, glass and so on. So, of course, it is going to be a contemporary tower. But the tower is not only its technology, it's what it means, how it hits the ground, how we integrate the tower into a neighborhood that is meaningful when you go take a walk and you're a child who has come many generations after these horrendous attacks on New York in 2001.
What else do you like? What are some of your other favorite buildings in New York City?
Oh, favorite? I have so many. Grand Central is one of my favorite buildings.
You gotta love Grand Central.
Excuse me?
You gotta love Grand Central.
You have to love it. You know, I love the streets of New York. You know, the streets of New York are wonderful because they are both within a very severe requirement of the grid, but each one has an expression. I mean, think of just a tenement in Lower East Side and Frank Lloyd Wright's Guggenheim Museum. They all are part of the city, and yet each one has a kind of a voice. And I think this diversity of architecture within a great unity of meaning of New York is the beauty of architecture in New York.
Give me one more. Grand Central, Rockefeller Center, what else?
The Flatiron Building. A building that comes to a sharp, thin point, it's soaring into the sky. I mean, that's a classic building.
Just as, what is it, Broadway and Fifth Avenue.
Just as Broadway cuts through the grid and create this incredible edge. And what a memorable building, not just because of the stacking photographs, but what great architecture.
Let's take another phone call. This is Judy on the Upper West Side. Hi, you're on Brian Lehrer Live.
Hi, Brian. Good to see you after all these years of
Thanks.
listening to you. My question is, there was a great emphasis on citizen participation meetings, huge meetings where people did all kinds of drawings and designs. What happened to that input that was, way at the beginning of the process?
Well, it was a very inclusive process. You will recall that originally LMDC presented other plans to the public of New York at the Javits Center, which the public rejected. The public said, you underestimate us. We want something incredible on Ground Zero. And then LMDC had the worldwide competition. I was lucky to be selected as the winner of this competition. And it has been a very democratic process in terms of inclusion through the competition process. And it has to remain so. I believe that the transparency of the process is a key.
Thank you very much, Judy. And does the public participation matter anymore? A lot of people say now, okay, we had the public participation, it was good, but now it's time for the public to butt out.
No.
Because otherwise nothing's going to get done.
No. I always think the public is who is more important? People. The city doesn't belong to some developers and architects. It belongs to citizens of New York. The more the public is involved, the more there is an insight. And really, it protects the development of the site. I encourage the public to continue to be involved because the public is the voice of the city.
Donald Trump took a pot shot at you in the New York Post last week. He called you an egghead and said your Freedom Tower is an egghead design.
Okay, can I say something?
How did you react when you heard
First
that?
of all, the egghead design is David Child's and so on. I never did a corkscrew building. I did a classic Donald Trump tower. If Donald Trump wants an internship in my office, he should come and see we're doing many high-rise 55, 60-story condominiums for $130 per square foot, $150 per square foot. Can you beat that? I doubt it.
Maybe if Donald Trump called me an egghead, I'd wear it as a badge of honor. So you should be proud.
No, I'm a very practical architect. And, what he was referring to was really the articulation of design, which had nothing to do with the master plan and nothing to do with my idea that this has to be a soaring tower and 76 feet high.
You're not originally from this country. Where are you from?
I was born in Poland, and I came to New York as an immigrant via, like most immigrants, on a ship. I arrived here without any language, as did my parents. My parents were Holocaust survivors, and I grew up in the Bronx.
As we've watched the incredible history of this week, or really the incredible history of the 20th century be remembered this week with the Allied victory over Germany, the 60th anniversary, and then President Bush in Moscow, it must have evoked so much of your life because your family escaped the Nazis and then lived under Stalin.
Well, first of all, most of my family was exterminated by the Nazis. My parents were just virtually the only two survivors of the large Jewish families in Poland. and they themselves survived in the Soviet gulags. And so they were imprisoned by Stalin. So they were both under the evils of fascism, of Nazism, under the evils of communism. And we were also, as kids, grow up. Until the age of 13, I grew up behind the Iron Curtain. So I have a first-hand experience of the true evil of totalitarianism.
What does America mean to you?
Everything. America is the country that is not just about freedom rhetorically. It's not about the Statue of Liberty as a cute symbol. It's not about 7076 as a clever number. Those things are what America is about. It is the hope of the world. It's a place where you can vote, you can believe in what you want, you can pray to whomever you want. It's a place that is good in the world.
As a European immigrant, are you shocked by the anti-intellectualism in the United States, so that when a Donald Trump calls you an egghead, that's actually an insult?
You know, I have to say something. You know, Donald Trump may call me an egghead, but I'm not one, you know, because I'm a practical man. We have hundreds of projects in our office. We work with very practical parameters. But, of course, life is about ideas. Was Jefferson an egghead? Was George Washington an egghead? You know, were our presidents, our leaders? No. They were people with great ideas, inspired, and practical people who could accomplish them. And that's what makes America, America.
So after this delay, how quickly do you think you and David Childs and anyone else who's involved can get the Freedom Tower redesigned?
We are mobilized. We are delayed by about 7 months, which is not a huge delay if you consider that we are building for the next century. And it has to be great. It has to be inspiring. And I think we all share the goal, whether it's David Childs, whether it's Silverstein, whether the government made it clear. We are all care about rebuilding Ground Zero. And, of course, it will happen. It will happen under my leadership as the master plan of the site, and it will happen in the right way.
And what is your role now? I mean, the papers seem to say in the last week that David Childs is going to redesign the Freedom Tower with you as the master planner.
Don't believe everything you read. Look, we've been a lot through with David Childs. He knows, he understands the plan. He's not a novice to the plan. The plan is given, the plan has been developed. He understands all the criteria. He's worked on it for a long time. I don't think David Childs has in any way, we should not imply that he has motives other than to make the site successful.
But this charade, if that's what it was, of 51-49, you're not going back to the same room and negotiate over this floor and that
we've
theme.
achieved a lot. You know, in a short time, we have come a long way. That's the point. And now we can move ahead, and we're moving ahead in a very positive direction.
Trump's preference, by the way, is that we rebuild the Twin Towers the way they were, plus one story, just to tell the terrorists, hey, we still win, we're still here.
History doesn't go backwards. History moves forward. We have to do something better. We have to create a neighborhood there. We cannot simply rebuild what was there. We have to create light. You will recall that even the plaza at the World Trade Center site, and I know it well because my brother-in-law worked there for 30 years, used to be dangerous. In the winter, there was too much wind. It was dark. We have to bring life, retail, activity, and a memorial that is really meaningful on that site. So it's not just let's rebuild it. History goes on. We have to acknowledge that history and create something that responds.
And what about the memorial? We've been talking so much about the Freedom Tower. We really haven't touched yet on the memorial, which is so important to so many people. And I've read that that, too, is diminished from what it originally was in terms of the light and the sight lines, in terms of the size.
No, not at all. Look, architecture is not a bunch of pictures that you see on a screen. You take an idea, you take a plan, you take the space, and you have to develop it. You have to work with all the stakeholders, with all the technical issues, with all the social issues, with all the practical issues and engineering issues. And I can only tell you that Michael Erard's memorial is going to be very beautiful. It will be a huge park which brings light to the place. As in my master plan, the footprints will go down. It'll be a spiritual place where you get away from the streets, which are active and beautiful. You'll see the slurry wall, which is an incredible experience to understand 9/11, both in its fatality and its meaning for the future.
Let's take another phone call. Jeff in Gramercy Park. You're on Brian Lehrer Live with Daniel Libeskind. Hello.
Hi, Brian. Daniel, how you doing?
Hi.
Listen, I want to talk about my idea to replace the Twin Towers, and I was thinking about 4 towers, all connected by a bridge, kind of like the way they did it in Kuala Lumpur. But instead of cylindrical towers, use square prism-shaped towers, and have the bridge cross in the middle between the 4 towers, and put a rotating restaurant on a pod in the middle, stretching all the way up to 1,800 feet.
Jeff, I hate to say it, but the competition's over, and Daniel won, not you.
Well, this tower is not like Kuala Lumpur. This is New York City. These are towers that stand in a spiral embrace of the memorial site at its center, rising to the Freedom Tower. It's a site-specific. It will never again be built anywhere. This is New York City. This is ground zero.
This may be out of your portfolio, but a lot of people say the most important thing that's going on at ground zero right now is not the redesign of the Freedom Tower or even the memorial, but Goldman Sachs wavering on whether they're going to build a headquarters down there. And if they don't, that's going to mark the beginning of the end of Wall Street as Wall Street. And then Lower Manhattan will never be what it was. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, we want Lower Manhattan to be... Look, Lower Manhattan is the third largest business center in the United States. First one is Midtown, second one is the Chicago Loop, third one is Lower Manhattan. So Lower Manhattan is of national importance and of global importance. By the way, there are more people living in Lower Manhattan today than there were before 9/11, because many of these old office buildings are being reconverted to residential. I think life is coming back. Of course we need investment. Of course there is a need to create a place there, and I believe it will happen.
If Wall Street isn't going to be Wall Street in a few years, then all this office space that you're designing may have no reason to be there.
From the very beginning, I said we are not just creating a set of megastructures. We are creating a neighborhood. At the center of this neighborhood is the Wedge of Light Plaza, the largest public space ever created in Lower Manhattan. It has a lot of dark canyons when you walk around Wall Street. This is a plaza determined by light. So light is very important. And of course, the fact that this is not just some big buildings, but that it has a quality for people to live there.
With this redesign that shrinks the footprint, how much less square footage of office space will be there from the original design?
It's likely that it will go from 2.6 billion to 2.1. Or maybe less.
And Mr. Silverstein seems to want, it's been reported, public compensation, tax dollars, to compensate him for that loss, because he's saying, hey, you know, the public is taking this for security concerns. You have an opinion about that?
No, I think he has to talk with the powers that are, with the governor, with the mayor. But I think this tower is very practical, the tower that will be built. It will be a tower that meets all the requirements and is a profitable tower.
Has this been worth all the struggle and aggravation?
You know, I never felt that aggravation. You know, of course it's hard. You're working with so many forces, but I believe in it. This is about true faith in America. This is not about getting a job, getting a building built on the side, doing something for yourself. It's about the meaning of the site. And who does not identify in their soul with what happened on the day? And the response, look, there could be political responses, military responses. Architecture can respond culturally. This is a cultural response to these attacks.
And not that your career was floundering, but this must be good for you in the long run, even if you're getting hammered here.
Look, no one said that life should be easy. No one said that that things should go without friction. In fact, anything important in life is difficult to achieve. You have to struggle for it. Democracy is not pulling a yes or no vote. You've got to do something that you believe in, and that's what it's about.
Well, Daniel Libeskind, good luck, and keep thinking.
Thank you so much.
The world needs eggheads like you.
Thank you
very much for being with us. And still to come, a new memorial and tourist attraction opens in Harlem at the spot where Malcolm X was assassinated. We'll get an advanced look and take your calls on the meaning of Malcolm X today. But first, we want to try a little experiment just for a few minutes. We've done 1.5 shows now in our Brian Lehrer Live series. We're still just getting started. And we think it's time to open up the phones and commit an act of democracy, just to see who's watching and what you care about. So for just a few minutes, we'll take phone calls on the question, what's the most important issue to you in politics today? Oh, and what's your opinion about it? Call us, tell us. Maybe we'll do a show on it. This show may have my name in the title, but it's more about what you think than what I think. So what's the most important issue to you in politics today? We'll just do this for a few minutes, so call right now. We'll just take the first several calls that come in. You won't have to wait long to get on the air. 212-251-0801. Is it the war in Iraq? Housing prices? Social Security? Overcrowded schools? Is it the filibuster over judicial nominees? Is it Mayor Bloomberg's West Side Stadium? What's the most important issue to you in politics today? 212-251-0801. We'll take your calls on the air right after this. Call now. This is Brian Lehrer Live.
Hi, I'm Cameron Diaz.
And I'm Gwyneth Paltrow.
We want to talk to you about energy. Here are some hard facts. If everyone replaced an ordinary light bulb with a compact fluorescent one,
we would diminish as much global warming pollution as taking 7.5 million cars off the road.
And let me tell you about hybrid cars. I have one, and it provides up to 30 miles per gallon more than conventional vehicles.
And won't it save you thousands of dollars at the gas pump?
Yes, it does. Pretty wild, huh?
Imagine how strong we would be as a nation if we didn't have to rely as much on foreign oil.
It's time for us to band together and really make every effort to conserve our natural resources.
During World War II, all Americans worked together to build an arsenal of democracy.
And now, it's our turn.
Who said we can't become less dependent on foreign oil?
You know, we can. We can.
Hello, I'm Lev Sverdov from the City College.
I'm Eugene Schender from Brooklyn College. We're grateful to be chosen as 2005 Rhodes Scholars.
Before we go off to Oxford University, we want to say thank you.
To our brave parents for bringing us to the United States.
And to CUNY for giving us access to outstanding faculty and a first-rate education.
If you're looking for a great investment and believe that young people deserve educational opportunity,
invest in CUNY.
Now.
For 12 more reasons to invest in CUNY, go to cuny.edu.
All right, the calls are coming in, so let's see what's important to you tonight. We will start with Betty in Rockaway Park. Hi, you're on Brian Lehrer Live. Thanks a lot for calling.
Hi, as a person that travels in the city, I always have trouble getting to different reaches. My thing is, they spend so much on the subways going towards Manhattan. Why don't they have better connections to the fringes of the borough? Like say, I live in Rockaway Park, and to get to Jamaica is a real big hassle.
Right. You know, this is a big problem in New Jersey, too, because they have everything oriented in public transportation to come into Manhattan. But a lot of people go within New Jersey, especially to work these days more and more. And, yeah, you can hardly go from Queens to Queens on the subway. You can't get from Rockaway Park to Flushing, for example, even though it's such a hub. And the one line that doesn't go to Manhattan, the G train, is so disparaged because it only goes between Brooklyn and Queens.
Yeah, well, I also just gotten a new job at Belmont Racetrack, and I got to travel like 2 or 3 hours to get to work.
Let me ask you a question about that. The season just opened this week, right?
Yes, it has.
Who goes to the racetrack anymore?
I don't know. I just started working at it. I've been trying to find a secretarial job, but I've been doing this on the weekend just to have a little money. But
right.
Different types of people. It's hard to explain. Some seem like they're real hardcore bettors, and there's some that ask me how to place a bet.
Betty, thanks a lot for your call.
All right, thank you.
Keep watching. Let's go to Susan on the Upper West Side. You're on WNYC.
Hello, Brian?
Yes.
This is Bob from the Upper East Side.
Hi, Bob.
My issue is staying alive, meaning keeping terrorists from getting nukes while the Bush administration is not paying attention to stuff like that. The Real ID Act was passed to try to blame Mexicans, while 19 of the hijackers came from Saudi Arabia. And they just made the visa requirements for Saudis to get in America easier again. And I'm really angry because we're not getting enough news of foreign news, because that helps, anything from nuclear non-proliferation and all that stuff. We don't even get a story about the Mexican mayor who had just charges dropped against him, and he'll probably be the next president of Mexico in 2006. But no one in America, unless you read the Spanish newspapers, would even know something. They were trying to the ruling party for 35 years, under Cardenas, and Fox, who was with Pan, they were trying to do a deal. Each side thought they would win, so they would cut out this guy from the PRD.
Right. Now, we did a segment on the Mexico City mayor on the radio show, and we're going to do more. There's this really interesting trend, which you seem to be aware of, in Latin America, of taking another look at politicians who are really pretty far to the left, who are rebelling against the whole, IMF, World Bank, United States, extreme free market ideology. And so this mayor of Mexico City, Lula, the president of Brazil, those who support Chavez in Venezuela, it's in a democratic context.
But I'm just using that as an example. It doesn't show up on ABC, NBC, or CBS, anything outside of the pension thing with was it United? It's much more important that Pakistan has got nukes, and that they're supposedly our ally, and we supposedly caught the third or second ranking guy hiding in Pakistan, that Osama bin Laden is still in Pakistan, and the reason Osama bin Laden is so important is that if we don't get him, it tells the rest of the world that we will let somebody hit us, and we don't hit them back.
And Bob, I'm going to move on. Thank you very much for your call. I really appreciate it. I want to remind our viewers that one of the ways that we want you to participate in the show over the coming weeks is to send us original video and original photos of things that show meaning about New York. We saw some of the video of the World Trade Center redesign as Daniel Libeskind has been working on it. We're going to see some video footage and some photos of the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem in a few minutes with a very well-known preservationist, Michael Henry Adams. And what's going on in your neighborhood? We probably have some photographers and some videographers and what they call vloggers now, like people who write blogs but only with video, who want to get some footage on the air that shows some meaning about New York City. And we can take them. We want you to send us email describing your photos or your video, and we'll consider putting it on the air. So send me an email. It's brian@cuny.tv, brian@cuny.tv. Let's take another phone call. Eva is in Clinton Hill. You're on WNYC. You're on CUNY TV. Forgive me, Brian Lehrer Live.
I've heard you on the radio a lot. I think one issue that I think nobody really talks about is the oil crisis and how much gas is costing us in the future. And also, I think one thing also that has bowled over, like on the West Coast, that we don't realize on the East Coast is that that California energy crisis and what happened, and nobody's really talking about that.
What would you like to see done with respect to oil? Do you have any thoughts?
I think we need to start investing in alternative fuels. I understand that there's a wind farm possibly going off in Long Island, which I think is a good thing. Like my father lives in the rural areas, and he's nervous about driving to the grocery store. So I keep asking him, "Are you getting enough food?" And to him, it's a real problem.
Wow, you mean he's nervous about spending the money on gas as high as the prices have gone?
Yes.
Just to get food.
Just to go grocery shopping, and he's by himself, and he's at least 30 miles away from town.
We're going to hear more and more of that, unfortunately, in this country, I think. Thank you very much. We'll get one more in here. Susan on the Upper West Side, whose line I blew a little earlier. Hi, you're on Brian Lehrer Live.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Good. We got you this time.
That's fine. I'm having problems and have been for the last couple of years on who to go to for news I can trust. I just don't know anymore. I've grown up with the Times. Actually grew up with the Herald Tribune. Can't go to the Times anymore. I actually relied on WNYC until the March on Washington, which they blew. Can't rely on them anymore. I really don't know where to go, and I'd like to see sources of news investigated enough so that I can go to a few of them and know where to go to find out my primary news.
What I usually say to people is go to all kinds of sources. Go to, The Nation on the left and read The Guardian from Britain and watch Fox News and read the Weekly Standard and read the Times and read the Wall Street Journal. I mean, not everybody has time to do all that, but to the extent that you have time, graze media that you know is coming from different perspectives. Yeah. Commercial media, not-for-profit media, right-wing media,
I wish I could every day, Is there one publication that does it all?
Well, there's certainly no one publication that does it all for everybody. So it's a question for you of figuring out who you trust by, checking them out and seeing who seems to you to be telling the truth.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we can sneak one more in here, and it is Scott in Washington Heights. Hi.
How you doing?
What's up?
It's just basically my point is just this overall climate of seems like we've taken the worst from. There's almost like this era, thing like almost like depression.
All right, we're going to have to drop you, Scott. I'm sorry to say because of the breaking up of your telephone. But thanks to all of you who called. This is much more about what you think than about what I think. on this show. So we're going to take a lot of phone calls. We're going to show you photos and videos over the weeks on Brian Lehrer Live. Now, remember, we continue to invite those photos and videos to show something meaningful about New York. Send us an email describing your work, and we'll get back to you if we want to consider airing it. Email us to show something meaningful about New York. Our email address is brian@cuny.tv. Malcolm X and the Audubon Ballroom coming up in a minute. This is Brian Lehrer Live.
This is fine. Thanks.
Prominent professors, outstanding students, illustrious alumni, all on the Emmy-nominated magazine show about CUNY. Hi, I'm Valerie Vasquez. Join us every week as we bring you stories about the people and programs that make CUNY a place where you study with the best.
Well, next Thursday would have been the 80th birthday of the civil rights leader Malcolm X, and on that day, the renovated and preserved Audubon Ballroom will open in Harlem as the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Memorial and Education Center. The ballroom isn't for dancing anymore. The Audubon is best remembered as the place where Malcolm X held some of his most important public events and the place where he was assassinated in 1965. We will use the occasion of the center's opening and Malcolm's 80th birthday now to talk about the life and death of Malcolm X, the controversy over preserving the Audubon, and Harlem real estate and architecture generally. With me is probably Harlem's most enthusiastic preservationist, someone who is truly passionate about the homes and buildings of his adopted neighborhood, as well as about Malcolm X and politics today. He is a sometimes guest and regular caller to my radio show on WNYC, someone who worked long and hard to make sure the Audubon was preserved, and author of this book, Harlem Lost and Found, also of this book, Style and Grace, African Americans at Home. Michael Henry Adams, welcome to Brian Lehrer Live.
Oh, Brian, thank you very much.
You're probably Harlem's leading preservationist, and you fought very hard to preserve the Audubon Ballroom. We'll show some video of the outside of it in its new form in just a minute. But were you ever in doubt that it would be preserved in some form?
Well, not only was I in doubt, but I was initially a proponent that instead of like now, where you would preserve the facade and about a little less than half of the room where Malcolm X was shot, that all of it should be knocked down. And I was so wrong, because there's no better indictment of the fact that the theater was completely destroyed and was and remains a parking lot. And that, you know, this theater where all of these great vaudevillians like Fanny Brice and the Marx Brothers, who lived in that neighborhood at the time, at the early part of the century, that all of this incredible original fabric should be destroyed and only a fragmentary monument be left to the legacy of Malcolm X.
Because part of this is now going to be a Columbia University Biotechnology Center, I think, right?
Well, there's a facility that was built on the half of the site where the ballroom stood, which is a biotechnological research laboratory that Columbia University operates as a profit-making venture, and this was part of this deal between the city and the state during the Dinkins administration to create this biotech research lab.
And so why for you was it an all-or-nothing proposition? You wanted to see the whole Audubon preserved, or you were saying originally better to knock the whole thing down than just preserve part of it, though you've come around on that?
Well, you know, I was younger and not as enlightened. I thought about the Lorraine Motel, I thought about the Dallas Book Depository, I thought about Ford's Theater, and I thought, would we really think that it would be a fitting tribute to Abraham Lincoln to have just half of the space where he was killed preserved? And thinking in that way, I was just being kind of absolutist. But as I say, no greater indictment of what's been lost there could be shown in a dramatic fashion than for people to come and to see that there's only a little less than half of the space where Malcolm X that was killed that survives, and that this beautiful theater, this one of the most beautiful theaters Thomas Lamb ever built, that it's a parking lot. And this needn't have been because, you know, in Washington Heights there's still plenty of building sites, and that's the problem all over the city really, is that we're told that it's an issue of either preserving our heritage or developing and growing for the future, and it isn't an either-or situation. We can have both, and so often it is put in these terms of either-or.
So next Thursday, when this center opens, it would have been Malcolm X's 80th birthday had he survived. We're going to show you about a minute and a half of archive footage of Malcolm X. This is from the public television program The Open Mind with Richard Hefner, and this dates from 1963. Check this out.
Should imagine you gentlemen were born.
Well, you can't compare the revolt of farmers with the revolt of black people in this country, because if the farmers are revolting over more or less corn, which is in no way involves the Constitution or what this country is supposed to stand for, but the black man in this country is supposed to be getting freedom. The country is supposed to be based on that. Democracy, freedom, justice, equality, and all that stuff that they teach us in school. And now, why should the black man have to go to court to get freedom when a white man in this country is free when he's born? Why should the black man need some legislation to prove that he's a human being when you don't need any legislation to prove that whites are human beings? So I make this point because, to come right back to my initial statement at the outstart of the program, you will never get real freedom and recognition between black and white people in this country without destroying the country, without destroying the present political system, without destroying the present economic system, without rewriting the entire Constitution. It'll be a complete destruction of everything that America supposedly stands for before a white man in this country will recognize a black man as something on the same level with himself. And this is why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that the best way to solve the problem is complete separation. Let the black man, those of our people in this country who want to, have a country of our own where we can go and stand on our own feet and solve our own problems and not have to continue going to court or waiting for some politician to legislate for another 100 or 2 years to prove that we're human beings.
Mr. Moderator.
So that's a period piece for a few reasons. One, this was Malcolm X before he had his transforming trip to Mecca and abandoned that line about racial segregation and a separate black nation. You also saw Richard Hefner there smoking a cigarette on the set as he was asking Malcolm the question at the beginning. Richard Hefner still hosting The Open Mind, which we produce here at CUNY TV, but that was from 1963, and it is amazing to think how much Malcolm X did change after that.
Well, you know, it's sort of akin to what you were asking me about my own evolution and regarding the Audubon. He made a tremendous transformation in his outlook, and it really is a fascinating one for me because, you know, I was talking to a friend when I was at this fellowship at the public library, and he was saying how in terms of Poland, where he'd gone back to find the places where his family had lived before the Holocaust, that in terms of Poland that Hitler had won because there was no Jewish community there. And it was a fascinating kind of revelatory moment for me. I thought, oh my gosh, all of those American separatists who were African Americans, separatists, they were in effect resigning themselves to losing their place in this country where we've been a part of the country from its beginning, and talking about being separate and rather than taking our place in this country. And it's really a wonderful thing that Malcolm X was able to make that same sort of transition. But it's tragic that just as he did, he was knocked down.
And some people think because he did. I'm not sure that will ever be proven or disproven. I want to show a little video, and maybe you can talk over this to our viewers, of the outside of the Audubon Ballroom redeveloped that we shot this week. There's the corner, Broadway and West 165th Street. And we're going to see the front of the building in just a minute, the facade. And what is that, Michael?
That is a mask of Neptune above this prow of a ship, which is being led by a Triton. And there are all of these elaborate terracotta ornaments on the facade of the Audubon, which was designed by Thomas Lamb. He was one of the most prominent theater architects ever in the United States, a Scottish immigrant.
Yeah, and looking down the block, Chase Bank on the corner, and then the Audubon.
And the most poignant kind of detail on the building are there these fox head trophies, which were an allusion to William Fox, who built the Audubon Ballroom and Theater and who went on to found 20th Century Fox.
We have a minute left. I know that you believe Harlem is being neglected by the city's preservation power structure. Are there a lot of other Audubon ballrooms in the neighborhood to fight for?
Well, there are. You know, there's this incredible theater called the Hamlin Theater, which the landmark's also by Thomas Lamb at 146th Street and Broadway. It was protected by landmarking, but the interior wasn't, even though that same interior and the exterior have been listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So this is a terrible kind of contradiction that the Landmarks Commission should say, their staff should say, that they don't feel that the interior of this theater meets their criteria, but the federal government says that it does. So there are all kinds of discrepancies, and something needs to happen because we do not have in Harlem equal protection under the landmarks law. Of the 23,000 buildings which are protected by landmarking in New York, about 12,000 of them are in Manhattan, and only 5% of those buildings are north of 96th Street. And
Michael Henry Adams had a lot to do with the early work that wound up in this preservation of at least part of the Audubon. You'll be hearing a lot more about it in the media. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you so much for this.
And that's it for this week's Brian Lehrer Live. Remember, we'll be here live every Wednesday night at 7 in May and June. Next week, Stacey Ann Chin on being gay and Jamaican. And we want to know what you think. Email your comments and suggestions for future guests and topics to Brian at CUNY TV. And remember, we also want those original photos and videos that show something meaningful about New York. Send us an email describing your work, and we'll get back to you if we want to consider airing it. And finally, I hope you can join me for the Brian Lehrer Show on the radio tomorrow morning. My guests will include Congressman and mayoral hopeful Anthony Weiner and author Eric Alterman on the persistent appeal of Bruce Springsteen. That's tomorrow morning at 10 on WNYC Radio, AM 820 and FM 93.9. Have a great night. The AMT